Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic, once again, thank you so much. And I'd like to thank Togo for hosting us. Thank you for welcoming us so warmly.
Welcome to the stage the leader of one of the commercial bank, top commercial bank in Africa. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Mr. Ayeyemi, head of EcoBank Group. Yes. Nice to meet you as well. Yes. You can sit here. Okay. Mr. Ayeyemi will be interviewed today by one of the top business journalists in Africa. We share the same first name, and I'm proud to call on the stage Mr. Ramanyam, top journalist of CGTN and Bloomberg. Ramanyam.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your attention. Ade, may I call you Ade?
Of course, that's where I am.
Okay. Perfect, perfect. You've been in charge of EcoBank for an interesting period of time. When you took over, things like Bitcoin was sort of a niche little product, about $300 to Bitcoin. Now it's at 16,000, went all the way to 64 and then came back down. Mobile money has exploded. Telecommunication companies are now, in some senses, your competitors and your collaborators. Some would say your frenemies, perhaps. Walk us through that period of time you've been in office. What has stood out for you in that journey?
Thank you. Your Excellency, I would say all protocol observed, right? I think the first place to start is, what is EcoBank? EcoBank is a Pan-African institution. We'll be 40 years now in a couple of years. But we are based in Togo, Lomé, Togo. We are born here. And it's always, people ask me, where do you live? And I tell them I live in Togo. They say, why? Because that's where our headquarters is. And you have to think back and look at, over 40 years ago, what was financial services like across West Africa? And people came together and they said they need to create opportunity for us to be able to finance trade across the West African continent, West Africa, subcontinent as it then was. And we then moved over time to become a Pan-African institution. So I stand on the shoulder of all the people that came before me, including ability to create an innovation in Togo that allows a Togolese bank to own banks across Africa. Today, we operate in 33 countries with banking licenses, and I see some of my bosses here who are governors.
Our regulators, as it were.
They're my bosses. Please, who are here and enable us to be able to operate across multiple countries. It's been a good journey, and I've been very, very fortunate with my host, the government and people of Togo. But it's not been an easy journey as well. Because I sit in my office, I look and see the possibilities that the ocean opened to us. And I look at the back and I see the possibilities of things that we need to do in terms of the quality of life of our people.
Do you find that tension between, on one hand, meeting the needs of your shareholders, right? Operating like a commercial bank versus the ambition that we've spoken about, developing our people, finding the money to invest in ports, rails, farms, etc., etc. Do you find that tension slightly difficult to manage?
I think it has to converge that when we create, I don't like talking about, working against poverty and all of that stuff. I believe that we can create wealth. If you look at the continent and the people we serve, they need to be shown the way to the future and how wealth can be built. They are not lazy, and therefore, as a financial institution, we can be profitable and also create a better future for our continent. The question of technology, how to use technology, how to use innovation, how to be able to align our people, to be able to save, to be able to borrow, to be able to invest and create better outcome, is possible here as is possible in every other part of the world. Our generation have that responsibility of being able to showcase that you can be a profitable institution, but you can also develop a profitable world. It is a profitable world that reinforces a profitable institution. We don't want to take from people what they do not generate. We want to help them to generate, and then we can share. And it is in that method, that mindset, that we'll be able to find a sustainable financial institution, a sustainable commercial entity.
And over that period of time, because now we're getting into the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Areas, LECAF, as it's known as well. And there are times when I'll be sitting, you know, in my little part of the world in East Africa, there is no logical reason why a maize farmer or a rice farmer there should not be able to trade, to sell that rice to someone in Nigeria, purely with the trade between the Naira and the Kenyan shilling. Absolutely not. But what do we need to do to build those rails, to get the money flowing within Africa without having to go through that third step of converting through the US dollar or the euro?
What divides us is not dollar and currencies. What divides us is mindset. The mindset that if you are in Kenya, you should deal within East Africa, and if you are in Nigeria, you should deal within Nigeria. The question of finding money, moving money, being able to make payments in Naira to dollar is not our biggest constraint. Our biggest constraint is creating a trust that when I go and buy rice from Kenya, it's better than rice I'm getting from Thailand. Because every person, the sweat that went to creating that rice in Kenya, if I buy it, I create opportunity and wealth for the person in Kenya. The idea of moving money around, honestly, is not a problem. A transfer is a message plus liquidity. We know how to do that. But we need to now find a way to enable our people to trade with each other. Trade requires information. Trade requires logistics. If the only way I can move goods from Kenya to West Africa is to round trip it through the rest of Africa without any rail in between us, and we want to move maize, it doesn't work that way. Okay? We need to try and figure out how to connect ourselves logistically, create those infrastructure, but more importantly, the mindset of our people. There was one day I feel very proud. I was in Kenya. I was on safari. That was not within reach of any modern technology. And I told somebody, I'm from Nigeria. And the person said, do you have Nigerian film? And that was very, very important because it made me proud that somebody in the village in Kenya understand that Nigerian film is a film about black, it's a film that they can watch. So we need, as people, to start figuring out what connects us together instead of what divides us. And it is in that finding unison among ourselves that we'll be able to start trading with ourselves. The question of moving money is always secondary.
And you know, it's an interesting example that you're using with respect to Nigerian content. Nigeria's film, music, it's virtually everywhere in Eastern and Southern Africa. But I want to bring back a conversation to around the question of fintech. 10 years ago, telecommunications companies and banks would not even be having the same conversation about moving money around. Fast forward to 2022, they're essentially in your space in some respects, frenemies, collaborators in some respects. How's that relationship evolved over the last decade?
So the people we need to serve is what unites us. We need 1.2 billion Africans that need to get access to financial services. So the first thing we did in Togo was to create FinTech Challenge. I said, guys, these are the problems we need to solve. You compete and figure out how to solve those problems. And the top 10 among you will make them fintech fellows for EcoBank. We'll support you for a period of 1 year. We give you access to our APIs, we give you access to our technologies so that you can then co-create with us, but be able to sell those things to the rest of the industry. And I'm proud to say today, there are some of those people that, even in market valuation, they are bigger than us, okay? But what we've achieved is to create an environment in which everybody understands that when we work together, we can achieve a lot. Therefore, for the fintech, for the MNOs, for the banks, for other financial institutions, it's important that we focus on the problem we need to solve, understand the basis of competition, and understand the basis of collaboration. Collaboration allows us to get things to the last mile. And it's in that last mile we can build a much more robust economy.
Where do you stand on cryptocurrencies?
You know, I'm a licensed banker. And some of my bosses are there. But what is it? It is always important to discuss innovation, understand the risk in innovation, understand the danger, and understand the opportunity. The technology that is being used for crypto is a very sophisticated technology that allows trust to be built across multiple locations. Some of the things that the cryptocurrency people, evangelists, are saying, you know, we need to stop central banks, we need to, those ones I don't believe in. But the technology itself, continue to develop that technology so that it gets to the point where we can find the best use. Remember, most of the things we have today in telecommunication was developed as a result of man going to the moon. The consequences of that is the technology that has developed over time. The technology I support, some of the uses today, I don't.
So, again, I know your bosses are listening. So if we were in their shoes, what sort of guardrails, what sort of sandboxes would you like to see to let them create so that banks like yours, or even innovators like your fintech fellows, can sit back and say, I think this might be a potential solution. I'm not 100% sure right now, but let's experiment. Let's see where this goes.
I think it's important for the regulators to bring all the players into the room. Because when we discuss, we will understand where the regulators are coming from their mandate of financial stability, where the fintech and all the other players are coming from because of their need for innovation and the need to be able to get things to market. We saw the confluence of that in Kenya in 2007 with M-Pesa, where the central bank, the Ministry of Finance, the banking sector, some of my colleagues were afraid then, but I wasn't. The banking sector and the MNO came together and said, this is the problem we need to solve. How do we make payment ubiquitous? And then that was solved. So it is important in this conversation that we don't talk at each other, we talk with each other.
COP27 wrapped up barely a week ago. Lots of conversations around where do we deploy capital when we need to power a continent of 1.2 billion people, roughly half of those who do not have access to electricity from the grid. Last year at COP, oil and gas was the pariah fuel. You can't put money in there at all. But here we are, a year later. There's demand for oil and gas coming in from Africa. There's demand for energy to come in for Africa. There's demand for energy for our own people. Do you find it curious to manage that tension? On one hand, you know, oil and gas is this weird pariah fuel in the West, but here, there's clear demand for it. It's 10% of your portfolio, your loan book, is in the oil and gas space.
Okay. What's important is that we don't want people to take Panadol for our...
Nous ne voulons pas que les gens prennent du Panadol pour leurs maux de tête. Notre problème, c'est que...
Industrial era. They're still cooking with firewood and coal. So we need to be able to be part of the conversation and talk about transition energy in terms of gas. You can't just rule that out. And I think the war in Ukraine has demonstrated that we are not the only one that want gas. Even Europe now wants coal, okay?
A lot of gas, even from here.
Okay, so we need to work, we need to be around the table. We don't want to be, we want to be part of the conversation. And we were part of the conversation in Rotterdam on adaptation. I was there. And we were part of the conversation in COP27. But our own people need to step up and be part of the conversation. We shouldn't, listen, we don't have to apologize. If you look at the forests that we have, that is sinking a lot of carbon, we are not a polluting continent.
And in fact, those forests and the services they provide for
the world.
We're not being paid for that.
Those forests exist. They provide services for the world. We don't get paid for it. I mean, I see the argument in Brazil on Amazon and co. But nobody is focusing attention on the Congo forest and on the rest of the forest that is doing work for humanity. So in the conversation we are having now, it's not a question of begging to be paid. It's a question of being able to showcase what we are doing for the world. So when it comes to this transition, we want to be paid fairly for the support we are giving. Indeed.
Your successor, Jeremy Owori, has been selected. Any words of advice for him? Other than playing nice with regulators.
No, it's not a question of being nice with regulators. This entity, EcoBank, was formed as a basis of creating opportunity for many Africans. This entity, EcoBank, whenever there's an issue in the continent, when there's Ebola in Liberia and Sierra Leone, every other person ran away. We went towards finding a solution. This entity, EcoBank, when there's problem in Central African Republic, we did not say we take our banking license like so many other people are closing and going. We said, how can we find a way to help? This entity, EcoBank, when there is an African that there is a situation, we try and figure out how to help. Any person that is leading needs to have that kind of attitude, and I'm sure that is the basis on which Jeremy was selected. He's coming home to West Africa. He's not a foreigner in our midst.
What next for Ade Ayeyemi? Because I know we're talking about you in this conversation, we're saying you're retiring, but are you really retiring? Are you leaving the banking sector?
It is my hope and expectation that I will be able to, at least in my limited way, contribute to the story of the continent so that we don't have people that are telling our story without listening to us. I've been here for a while now. I've been across, and thank you. I live among you in Kenya for 9 years. I live in South Africa for a similar period. So I want to be able to participate in that conversation in an academic environment.
Well, looking forward to reading your papers, your dissertations in the future. Ade Ayeyemi, thank you very much for your time, your attention.
Thank you.